Today we welcome Miss Britney Bouldin, the founder of Moms for Liberty chapter in Union County, North Carolina, and her strong voice led her to the position of the National Moms for Liberty organization as the chapter support specialist. These days, Britney can be found advising chapter chairs from all across our country and fighting for parental rights. Additionally, she says she is passionate about challenging Christians to stop retreating from the ills of society and start engaging with it civically. And boy, do we support this message. Welcome to the show, Britney.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us, Britney, paint a clear picture for the folks.
Okay.
How is education really failing students and actively harming them today?
So it's twofold, actually. I think you can look at the rates of reading. 2 out of 3 kids aren't reading at grade level. Our math scores are in the tube. Our science or our civics and history scores are terrible. They're abysmal. I think as long as we've been recording them, they're the worst they've ever been. The civics scores. So they're not learning. So they're being harmed in the sense that they're not getting what they're supposed to be getting. They're going to school to be educated, and they're not being educated. So that right there is a big failure. But the other side of that coin is, they're at school. So what are they doing with that time if they're not educating our children? Well, they're doing a lot of things, and those things have nothing to do with education. It's mostly indoctrination. It's mostly ideology pushing. There's a lot of what you would call pseudo-psychology that's going on. They're basically trying to get the teachers to act like little therapists that don't have any education to be therapists, aside from just like a continuing education thing you have to get. And then you have more harm because of that, because you're having these teachers to teach these things and to do these things, and they're evoking all these emotions, because it's all about emotions. They're evoking all these emotions, and they're not really qualified to be doing this. So there's another harm on top of that, is they've spun up all these emotions, and then they're not equipped to handle it. It's really kind of like a rat's nest and a dumpster fire all wrapped up into one. And we wonder why kids are depressed. We wonder why there's so much violence in school. The proof is in the pudding. As Christians, we know that you look at the fruit. Well, the fruit of the direction that education started turning, and I would say it's not just been in the past few decades. I mean, this has been a long time coming, but we're getting the fruit. But what happens is the left just continues to double down on, we don't have enough money, and it's because people are oppressed. It's all these things that have nothing to do with education as the reason why. So we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. It just keeps getting worse and worse, but nobody wants to look at the actual facts.
Well, I definitely agree with you, because I think as parents, we know our children best.
Correct.
And a lot of them are not loving to read anymore the way we grew up with classics like Black Beauty and all these other things. And instead, about 3 years ago, I'll share with you, Britney, because I'm so excited you're here with us and you have the role that you have, because you're ringing that bell really hard. And Moms for Liberty has been a national group that's been doing that with so many local chapters. I'm a proud member of the Patriot, not the Patriot, but the Pike County chapter. And we are patriots, so I have to say, you have to love your country, you love your children, you want a country for them. But anyway, so about 3 years ago, we went through the books that were in before everything kind of shut down for parents to see things. And we recognized really quickly that 1/3 of the books in the Reading Wonders in elementary school level, from pre-K to 5th grade, education was replaced with social emotional learning. Well, how does Johnny feel about 1+1? What are you talking about? You know, and these issues that kids don't have the emotions to handle racism or slavery. And all of a sudden in these reading books, they were talking about segregation. How do you feel about it? Well, they barely know their alphabets, let alone how they're going to feel about these issues. So they've kind of set the groundwork for critical race theory. Wouldn't you agree?
I would totally agree. Social emotional learning, just what it does is it gives generative situations, what we call generative topics. They're topics to generate a feeling, to generate an avenue to teach activism. And they, to be an activist, and that's truly what they want. They just want little working soldiers that are activists for the people, which is the government. If we kind of tip our hat at Mal with that the whole people, it's all towards the government. But like a perfect example would be in a math class, you talk about how Johnny and Susie got to go to the amusement park, and then all of a sudden the teacher says, oh, well, who here has been to an amusement park? And, everybody raises their hands but two, and they're like, oh, well, you haven't been to amusement park. Why can't you go to amusement park? Well, this one little kid says, well, my parents can't afford me to go to an amusement park. Another one says, oh, well, my parents work 3 jobs, so they don't have time to take us to the amusement park. Oh, well, that's terrible. Well, how come your parents have to work 3 jobs, or how come you can't afford it? And then it takes it down to this road of, oh, well, we're immigrants. And so then all of a sudden this math lesson is about oppressed and oppressors, and the haves and the have-nots. And then everybody's feeling this emotion. And then you plug in critical race theory or gender theory or whatever theory. I call it the critical theory of the month club. So SEL is basically, if you had like a video game, SEL is the game, is the console, right? And the videos that you plug in, the cartridges that you plug in to change the game, are all the different critical theories, right? This all started with critical race theory, but they took that game out, and now we've got gender theory in, and they're pushing gender theory really hard, but they're using the console of SEL to inject all of these different theories into our children's learning, and it creates emotion. Every single time it creates emotion. And if you focus on emotion constantly, what are you going to get? You're going to get more emotional kids that are emotionally unstable.
So it really sounds, Brittany, like what you're telling us is, instead of schools educating, being educational institutions, it sounds more like they're becoming mental health clinics.
Yes. And that's exactly what's happening. If you look in California, they have this WISC, I think it's called. The CDC is pushing it, as well as the WHO and UNESCO. They're all, the UN. They're all pushing this thing called WISC, and it's the whole child model, and it's basically it's community schools. So it's this whole model where kids, and they're already doing this in California, is where kids can go to school and they can get everything, but they're doing it all under the guise of mental health needs that need to be taken care of. And I don't know if you notice kind of what they do with this. What tends to happen is they take a small minority of children that have a need, and then they say it's everybody needs this, because this small, so like for instance, because a couple kids are transgender at a school and they need to go to this specific bathroom, then everybody needs to be able to go to these bathrooms that they choose that they feel, because there might be another transgender that will be upset. And so they broadly apply a rule that doesn't apply to everyone.
And the perfect example of that we're seeing is in women's sport. I played 3 sports in school. Okay, I was very tough, but guess what? I could never beat a man. You have Navratilova, who came out, the tennis star, and said, This is crazy. Women need to compete with biological women, and she's gay. At least she's ringing that bell, you
Yeah.
know? So we see this in our culture right now. We are being attacked for
Mhm.
being biological male, biological women. And guess what? They call those things growing pains when you're young. Of
Mhm.
course, if you ask your kid, you know, are you happy? They're going to say yes. Or are you depressed? Yes.
Mhm.
Because they don't have the intellect to understand what it means, and they want to please the adult. We taught them as Christians, we taught them to respect your elders.
Mhm.
So they're going to try to comply to you out of
Yes.
respect, and they
Yes.
manipulate it on creating right now a file on every child.
Mhm.
And we don't know what they're going to do with that file. Is that file going to affect them when they're going to apply for college? Is it going to affect them if they're applying for a job? We don't know.
Yeah. That's with
It's
all the data collecting. I think that's one of the biggest epiphanies that I've had in doing this work. And I'll admit, I was a fence straddling Christian for most of my life. And it's been in the last probably 5 years that I got off the fence. God, He made me aware of my fence straddling and pushed me to make some serious choices and really realize where this all goes. And
amen.
I realized that, because I was actually for gay marriage, and I just was like, they need to be able to visit each other in the hospital, and then now I see where this goes. That I thought that was the end, but that was just the beginning. Because the progressive way is to keep progressing. I mean, it's funny that they call it that progressive
It's always
appears
the
to be good,
opposite.
but it's not. It's just they're progressing, but they're progressing straight to hell is what they're progressing, and in debauchery and just no morals and nothing. So God woke me up. But what I realized is when they took God out of our schools, I, and I think most of America believed that they were making schools neutral. And I have just come to realize that there is no such thing as neutral. If you're not pointing to God, you're pointing away from God. And what they did is they traded in God for secular humanism, science type thing, and I didn't even realize it was happening to me. In the past 5 years, I realized that I've been just absorbing through my skin, growing up in this culture, feminism that I didn't even realize I had absorbed. I refused to say obey at my wedding, like be why? I can't tell you now because I just didn't want to be you know what I mean? And so there's so much of that that has been absorbed. And as Christians, what I've noticed and what God kind of I feel like He showed me is that there is no neutral. There never has been neutral. Christians have continued to retreat. We've retreated from the schools, we've retreated from culture, and we are getting our I mean, we're getting our fruit. This is the fruit. And it's frustrating to me. I see that parents leave public schools. Now, listen, everyone has a right to do what they want with their children and their education. I am not
Absolutely.
dogging anyone for homeschooling, for sending their kids to Christian schools. Everyone knows what's best for their child. What I'm saying here, though, is what keeps happening is the Christians, and I've had this with even in my own family, they pull their kids out of the public school. They say they're still going to be involved to fight. They get in their private school or their Christian school or their homeschool, all bunkered down into this little utopian, safe zone, and they never look back. They don't even check the rearview mirror. Meanwhile, in the rearview mirror, we have it's literally a dumpster fire. And guess what's in that dumpster fire? Children. Yeah, a lot of them may come from families that are not Christian. So we should still care as Christians. They may have families that are Christian that just aren't paying attention. Those kids, they can say those kids are those parents' responsibility. Yes, they are. However, we're Christians. We should care about the innocent getting their innocence taken away. And that's it. What I'm seeing with these Christians fleeing these arenas and just not even looking back, to me does not feel very Christian at all. These are the kids that are left behind in these schools. Not only are they being harmed, which I think is huge, is like that should be enough for every Christian to be like, okay, what can we do? But they are also going to grow up and they're going to be living in the communities with all of our children. So what are we doing here by just ignoring it? It's not going to go away. And by the way, we uncovered here that the Christian school that was attached to my former church, that someone in my family pulled her kids out of public school to go to. They had a guy come in for diversity training with their students, because the school doesn't believe in that, but the accreditation agency, the largest Christian accreditation agency, is pushing DEI stuff onto Christian schools in order to be able to get their accreditation. You're not going to avoid this. You can't run from this. If we do not stand our ground at the cultural community level, then it is going to come for us. It's just a matter of time.
I think people have been confused of what it means in the Bible when it says love thy neighbor.
Yes.
Love thy neighbor means love everyone's children, because they're all children of God. And we are looking at the next generation being the future of this world. And this is just the reality of it. I think the focus has, instead of turn the other cheek, should be, we need to be the black robe regime and be the examples of how to fight against the satanic movement, because that's what it is. It's a satanic movement. So here in Pennsylvania, I'll share with you, Brittany, because that's where I'm located in Pennsylvania. And I just read an article this morning by Lou Barletta, who was a former U.S. representative here, and he also ran at the last cycle for governor. And he has come out in the newspapers today. I'm very proud to say this because we need more people taking on this fight. And he says, say no to couth in PA schools. It is the newest threat entering our schools. Can you tell the folks a little bit more about this couth app? Are you familiar with it?
I actually don't know a ton about the couth app, though I do know that one of our chapter chairs in Pennsylvania is all over this. Jamie Tromba has been sounding the alarm on it. I know that it's very insidious. I know, kids are going to have access alone to things. Do you know about it?
Yeah, so the couth app, from what I understand, it's out of the UK.
Yes.
It is a mental clinic type of app. Number one, parents are not notified if their child goes on this app. So they'll be instructed by their teachers or their guidance counselors at school. Oh, you're depressed, go on it. Now, you don't know who's on the other end because, as you mentioned, I think before, these people are not trained. They have very minimal certifications to be able to discuss depression with your child. And the focus, from what I'm understanding, is on transgender. Oh, why are you depressed? Oh, maybe you're in the wrong body. Okay. And obviously we see many reports, and Jordan Peterson, God bless him, is one of the interviewer psychologists who came out with reports about how transgender children are regretting the choices that they made, and because they were children. So you can't blame the parent, because guess what's happening with the parents? In a lot of states like California, if you say as a parent, I want to wait with my child, I don't want this for my child, let them decide when they're 18, guess what? They're going to take your child away for abuse. So this is what's coming up. Now, here in Pennsylvania, the couth app has passed in the Assembly, in the House of Representatives. If it passes through the Senate, and gets signed happily by this Democratic governor, then every child will have access to this type of demonic manipulation. So there are demons all over the place attacking our children. And I'm glad that you said it's not only the public schools, because they don't stop. You're right. The progressives don't stop. And that's why we have to stay the course. Now, you mentioned also in your bio, which really, impressed me so much, among other things, I'll say it, which is Christians are hesitant to get involved. So let me ask, because this is the $1 million question, right? How do we change that?
So I think we have to have pastors that step up. I don't know what happened, but I think that somewhere in the 80s and 90s, there was a concerted effort to beat Christians down, to not be that Christian, right? Don't be that Bible beater Christian. And it took hold, right? And then everybody kind of wanted to be the cool Christian. You have churches now that like play secular music to get to be the cool church that brings people in. And somewhere I think in the 90s and the aughts, they call them the 00s, you know, there was this whole big church movement where it was all, you know, trying to to not really blend in, but match culture so you could pull more people in. And I get the impetus of that, but we have doubled down on love at the expense of truth is what's happened. We don't dare speak truth if it can be viewed as unloving. And that's where I think a lot of pastors have been tripped up. I do know that even generations before that, pastors, you know, what's in our culture, what has been said for decades, that the things you don't talk about, right, in mixed company: sex, religion, and money, right? Well, I actually am personally going to argue that that is the worst thing that we could have ever adopted in our culture, because sex and money and spirituality, religion are three very important things that can take whole communities and societies down. So I think we should be talking about them, and we should be talking about them a lot, instead of just letting everything, if we don't talk about it, then we don't address it. And I think that was on purpose. I think that was a Satan thing. But yeah, we made love our idol in the church, and Satan then also, well, and I think also within the church, pastors with the whole 501c3, pastors stopped talking about politics because they were worried they would get that 501c3 pulled. And when pastors stop talking about politics, then whether directly or indirectly, the message across the church congregation becomes we shouldn't talk politics at church. The church that we just left, every time I brought up politics, it was like I was a leper. And I kept trying to explain to people, and I think this is how we do it. I'm trying to talk to more and more pastors, but we have to show again that we have to talk politics, because as Christians, we care about people. And I'm stealing this from Allie Beth Stuckey because I think it's so amazing, but we have to care about people. If we care about people, well, policy affects people, and politics affects policy. So if we actually are going to care about people, then we have to care about the things that affect people, which is policy and politics. I get it. Politics is awful. I went through my first primary 2 years ago, and I kept posting that primaries are God's preview of hell. I truly believe this. Primaries are definitely God's preview of hell. It's awful. Politics is awful. I still hate politics. I'm very in politics, but I still hate it. Yeah. I had somebody recently tell me, you can't say that. You can't say that you hate politics because you're the most political person in your county. And I said, but it's true. And quite frankly, I feel like the reason we're in the situation we're in is because too many people who hate politics retreated from politics.
They were disgusted.
Now that we just have people that love politics and that want politics because of what it can give them, the power, the money, and all this stuff. We're supposed to be stewards of the communities that we live in as Christians, and we have retreated and retreated and retreated. Christians need to look at politics not as a calling. It should be kind of like your chore, right? In a family, to live in this house, my kids have to help out with chores because that's what they do as part of our community in our house. So to live in this place that God gave us, our chore should be to be involved in politics. And you know, I was listening to the Family Research Council, and they said at one point that one of the people that deals with their election said it's no longer enough to just vote. And I thought about that, and I was like, gosh, that's so true. But then I had a second thought, and I was like, no, actually, it was never enough to just vote. part of why we got to this situation is because Christians, by and large, thought we just needed to show up and vote. No, we need to show up and volunteer. We need to show up and run for office. We need to have our hands in every single thing in our communities. If we want to spread the gospel, that's how we do it. We get involved in our communities in areas that actually affect people. So that's county commissioner, that's school board, that's, clerk of court, that's state senator, all the way up to national, but really local. I mean, if 2020 taught us anything on a local level, it gave everyone a crash course in civics. That local level is where it's at. But we've been detached from our local communities for quite a while. So I think pastors have to wake up. Pastors have to challenge the congregation. I'm not saying they need to speak from the pulpit about who they should vote for. My father-in-law was a pastor of a Baptist church. He would have rather died than said who to vote for from the pulpit. But you can talk policy. You can talk issues in the community. You can not talk politics at all, but you can challenge your congregation to go and get involved in politics.
That's right. It's called issue advocacy.
Yes.
It's very simple. Lead them to water. If they want to drink, they will drink.
So I think churches need to really step it up again, and pastors really need to start challenging their congregations to do these things.
And there are some good ones out there. Our pastors
not
in church fight hard. It's not enough. People don't learn history. When this country was founded with the revolution, and you see these cemeteries from those ages, from that time, it was the pastors were on the front line with the congregation that cared about the issues and understood the politics of what freedom was. And they were the examples. So we need the examples, not only the churches, but in our communities.
So a great resource, if you go on momsforliberty.com, and if you're a member, I strongly suggest everyone to be a member, because they have lots of things that are for members only on that. But if you go up to resources, there's a thing called there's a tab, there's events. If you go on events, you choose the 2023 summit and look through all the different breakout sessions. There's one from Wallbill. It's called Faith of Our Founders. It's the guy from David Burton is the dad. I keep wanting to say Tim Burton, but I think that's actually the movie director. But there's his name is Burton. But he did a breakout session for Faith of Our Founders, and he goes through, and they have researched the founding original documents. So they've read original letters, everything. So this isn't hearsay. This is thoroughly researched information. And he talks about the faith of our founders. They like to say that our founders weren't really Christian. That's no. I mean, yeah, there might be one or two, but by and large, they very much were. And there were some miracles that happened in the revolution that nobody can explain except for but God. So I would encourage everyone to go listen to that breakout session, because it will change your mind on how you feel about the founding.
I think that's amazing. And we all need to go to www.momsforliberty.org.
Yes.
And if you aren't involved in a chapter yet, get involved. Find out who your leader is. There are meetings all the time. Okay. There's no reason why you can't get involved. And I want to say, Britney, thank you so much for joining us today. I definitely want to talk to you again at some point. Yeah. You're a plethora of knowledge, and there's no one stronger than a mama bear who's been poked too hard and has the strength of God on her side. And I do want to end it with this, which is, you remind me of Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Well, this is what Christians need to remember, because guess what? Satan knows this to be true. And we need to win that battle.
And Satan's in the schools training up our children. I mean, there are Satan clubs in schools. Like, it's not even hiding anymore. So if we're not in schools, Satan's there. He knows that too.
Amen. Thank you so much. You have a blessed day, and thank
You
you
too.
on behalf of our audience for all that great information. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for the opportunity.